Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Enfield in the far north of London to Crouch End. This ride takes about 35 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey takes from 45 minutes to an hour, so taking your bike is a great way to save time. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel on YouTube, as I try to post new videos just like this every week. I also want to say a big thank you to those of you who are supporting the channel on Patreon. If you're not already doing so, there's a link in the description of the video. Okay, let's get going. So we're starting on the edge of Enfield town centre, on the corner of Cecil Road and Sydney Road. We start by going down this shared pavement for a short stretch, and then onto the carriageway of Sydney Road itself. As you can see on the right there, when you're coming in the opposite direction, you get a lightly protected cycle lane, which is a nice touch. In this direction you're on the carriageway, although it is generally a pretty quiet street, there is actually a car park at the mouth of the road, which can generate a little bit of traffic. As you can see from this run though, it's not really a big deal. We turn onto Essex Road, and when we get to the end of here, we're going to move off the back streets and go onto the main road. This is London Road, the big road that goes up to Enfield, which turns into green lanes further south. Fortunately, Enfield Council and TfL have kitted it out with some fantastic protected cycle lanes down pretty much the whole length from Enfield town centre to the southern border of the borough with Haringey. This will comprise the first part of the route. The second part will go through a new low traffic neighbourhood introduced by Haringey Council in the streets around Bounds Green that was put in just this week. Then we'll use an old legacy cycle network, which is still really quite nice, to get to our final destination in Crouch End, which is still in North London, but a fair way south of where we started. This first stretch of the route on the main road is called Cycleway 20, and it uses a variety of different ways to protect us from motor traffic. You might have noticed some curbs on the right, but the most common way of protecting around here is actually these protective wands, which divide the cycle lane from the rest of the traffic. While they don't provide as much physical protection, they actually do a really good job of keeping the motorists out of the lane on a street like this. They're also a lot cheaper to install than curbs, and with TfL's finances as they are at the moment, I don't think we'd see such a long route without them. But as you can see here, not all of the route is done with wands. There's also bits that are kind of on the pavement, like there with the town surface that we went through. Overall, I think it's a really well engineered solution. Most people will feel totally safe cycling on a one segregated lane like this, but curbs and step tracks are used particularly around junctions where things can get a little bit more complicated. Also of note are the bus stops, like this one coming up here. That design is called a bus border, where the track turns into a shared space as you pass through. They're not ideal, but they are useful for designers where there's not a lot of space. Much better is a design like this, called a bus stop bypass, where the track goes behind the bus stop waiting area. These take up a bit more space, so aren't always possible, but they reduce conflicts between buses, pedestrians and cycles. This junction's an interesting one, by the way. To keep going straight, we use the Toucan crossing here, rather than the cycle crossing, which is actually for turning right down a side road. You probably saw that I pulled up to the wrong bit before correcting myself, so you could say that that's a little bit counterintuitive, or maybe that I just need to pay more attention to where I'm going. This stretch here you can see doesn't really have any wands, just for a moment, and that's because these houses have driveways which go onto the road. I understand why that is, but I could still spot a few places where you could have put a wand, perhaps in front of the trees, without really disrupting people turning into driveways. So that would be one improvement that I'd like to see to the route. That's not to detract from how good the cycle lanes are though. This is definitely one of the best main road routes in London, and it's especially good for outer London. I know Haringey Council, who we'll come to later, has got plans for a protected cycle route down their section of green lanes further south, and possibly Whiteman Road as well. That's currently the big gap severing this great protected route from the central London protected cycle network, and if they were to fill that, which I really hope that they do soon, then you'd be able to cycle on protected lanes all the way from Enfield to pretty much anywhere in central London, and even South London, so let's hope that happens. For now, you can see that the character of this route has changed a little bit. It's no longer protected by wands, and we've gone on to a stepped cycle track just next to the pavement. There's some really nice planting here, and I like that the opportunity of redoing the street has also been used to add a little bit of greenery and just do a bit of placemaking as well. If you're wondering where Enfield has got the cash to do this so well, it's because they were part of the Mini Holland programme. That programme, introduced by former Mayor of London and soon-to-be former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, chose 3 outer London boroughs and gave them lots of cash to do things properly, essentially to demonstrate that good cycle infrastructure didn't only work in inner London. The other 2 boroughs are Waltham Forest, which has an excellent programme, and Kingston upon Thames, which also has some very good routes. So I would say it's probably been quite a good success. We're just passing through the town centre of Winchmore Hill, by the way. Given we've only been cycling for about 10 minutes and it takes about 20 minutes to get the bus from here to Enfield, I'd say that if you live in Enfield or Winchmore Hill and want to get between the two, then cycling is also a good option. But we're not just going to be doing this short trip today, we are going deeper into inner London and we'll be ending at Crouch End. Some people seem to have not heard of Crouch End. I've experienced that before in real life when talking about it. And I put that down to it not being on the tube map. It doesn't have a tube station of its own. But so if you don't know where it is, it's just south of Alexandra Palace. Interestingly, it nearly did have a tube station of its own. It was to be incorporated into the Northern Heights plan, which was an extension of the Northern Line, but that basically got cancelled because of World War II. This is probably a good time to say that if you are enjoying this video, then you should hit the subscribe button and the bell icon on YouTube to subscribe to the channel, as I do post new videos just like this every week. I also take requests, so if anybody has any ideas of routes they'd like to see or infrastructure they think that I don't know about, then they should flag it in the comments below. I also always read and reply to all the comments, so I'd love to hear from you and what you think about the video. You can also download a digital map of the route, a GPS/GPX file, and you can use that in whatever app or device you like, and there's a link to that in the description. For now, we are now coming up to this junction of Hedge Lane, and unfortunately the lights here were out of service, so I had to rely on the temporary traffic lights. That church on the right there, by the way, is kind of architectural interest. It's St John the Evangelist Palmer's Green, and it's interesting because it's an Edwardian church, and you don't see too many of those around, at least in London. The building was finished in 1908. The architect was a John Aldred Scott. He was the son of Sir George Gilbert Scott, who was a very famous architect who designed the Midland Hotel attached to St Pancras Station, which we've gone past many times on this channel. We're getting to the end of the first stage of this ride, the protected lanes, and we're currently passing through Palmer's Green town centre. This is a destination in its own right, and you should take note that you can get here by bike easily from Enfield and Winchmore Hill. I won't do individual videos for those separate rides because that would just be a small section of this video, but it's a good route in and of itself. Slightly annoying to see a van parked there, but it's highway maintenance, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Just a quick word about the markings on the side roads here. You see these, they're called elephants' footprints. I'm not totally sure about the use of those on side roads. I think that motorists don't tend to know what to make of them, and I'd much rather see the standard giveaway lines used up to the cycle track. I don't know whether that's legally possible or not, but I've certainly had a few incidents cycling down here where motorists, particularly coming out of the side roads, will pull up to the actual giveaway line and nearly hit you. So maybe that's one way that the priority over the side roads could be reworked. We're turning off green lanes now, and as I said earlier, it would be great if this protected route continued all the way down south. But for now, there's actually a really good route into where we're going. We're going to use this cycle zebra crossing here, so make sure you look both ways and don't expect people to stop. And we're going to turn into Palmerston Crescent. I'm just going to squeeze past this ambulance, fair enough that that's there, and you'll see that this road is relatively quiet and you're unlikely to run into any traffic on it. That is achieved because the southern end of the road, which we'll be getting to in a second, has been closed off to motor traffic. As a result, there's no through route for cars along the whole street, although it's a little bit on the narrow side because of the double parking on the street, despite the fact that a lot of these houses actually have driveways. You can see how it's been done there. There was a bollard and it leads on to a shared pavement. I'm not really a fan of shared pavements because they introduce conflict between pedestrians and cycles, but in this case there isn't really any foot traffic around here anyway. It leads onto this two-stage cycle crossing, the two sides of which are reasonably well synced up, and then it leads us into Palmerston Road. Now, Palmerston Road is part of Haringey's new Bounds Green low traffic neighbourhood. This was introduced a couple of weeks ago, And the change to the cycling environment is frankly huge and extremely positive. It was previously a pretty hostile environment for cycling, but as you can see now, it's more or less clear of traffic. You could easily cycle on here with kids and it would be no problem at all. So the LTN has really closed a missing link between those great protected lanes that we were on green lanes, Cycleway 20, and other routes that will lead us to Crouch End. Given the LTN is so new, when I came down here I did see the occasional lost looking van, such as these two that we're just going past here. That's because sat-navs, which tended to send people down quiet streets and residential streets to avoid main roads, probably haven't been updated yet in most cases, but after a few months these things do tend to settle down and the full benefits of the scheme become a lot clearer. That's what we found in other boroughs. It's worth saying that while fantastic, this LTN is not a replacement for a main road route down Green Lanes or Whiteman Road. We'll still need one of those to let people from Haringey and boroughs north of it cycle into central London without traffic. Politically, this LTN represents a huge change though. For ages, Haringey has been basically the worst inner London Labour borough when it comes to cycling, and they're finally doing something, and they're doing it really well, I think. They've got an ambitious programme of low traffic neighbourhoods. They've got this one, they just installed another in St Anne's just south of here, and there's also one coming to Bruce Grove, West Green, which will also enable a lot of new routes. So you do have to hand it to the councillor and officer team there for finally getting stuff going, because there were clearly big institutional challenges to getting something like this through. It's currently just a trial scheme, but let's hope it gets made permanent at the end of the trial, and that Haringey also pushes on with the ambitious programme of main road routes, which it has promised as well. I'm definitely planning on doing a lot more videos using the Bounds Green LTN and the other ones that have been introduced and will be introduced by Haringey, but for now we've left the LTN and we're in Nightingale Gardens. This is a shared path. You might have noticed the blue and white sign on a stick on the right just there, which tells us that we're allowed to cycle on it. But the path is relatively narrow and it's of course shared with pedestrians, so if you do come across anybody walking, make sure you give them priority and a wide berth. You don't want to freak anybody out. Follow the paved path along the edge of the fence and then you should emerge into a park called Avenue Gardens. When you get to the other blue sign, just turn left down this path. This stretch of path in particular could really do with a resurface. It's very bumpy and has a lot of cracks in it. It takes us to a shared pavement. You can see these symbols on the floor denoting it's shared, and we go across a zebra crossing there. That was just a regular zebra crossing, not one of the new ones for pedestrians and cycles. This one, however, is for pedestrians and cycles. So if there's any paint going spare at the Haringey depot, it would be great to have that first one repainted so it connects up the two paths properly. It did look like it needed a repaint as well. After a short stretch on a shared pavement, we're now going down this path, the New River path. This path mostly follows the route of the New River, which is mostly underground, although if you were looking carefully while I was talking about zebra crossings a few moments ago, you would have spotted it running under the bridge which carries Station Road. We've now come out onto Western Road, which is generally a low traffic environment, although there is a depot or two here, which generates a little bit of motor traffic. We're not really on this street for long, although it's not a particularly unpleasant environment, and we're going to turn off right in a second. When we turn off right, we'll be going under the East Coast Main Line, which is one of the main railways that goes into London from North East England. Up the Penstock path, there's a separate cycle section on the left and space for people walking on the right hand side over the line. However, once we get through the tunnel, it actually just turns into a regular shared path where we both have to share the same space. So make sure you give people a wide berth and don't go too quickly here. This path is basically fine, but it's a little bit on the narrow side and the fences can make it feel a bit claustrophobic. You can note that there are some street lights here though, so it should be okay to cycle at night. As we turn around the corner here, you'll see that we're going over a river, and that is indeed again the New River. You can also pick it up further down at Finsbury Park, although we're not actually going there today. We leave the path now, turning left down Chadwell Lane, and on our left you can see this modernist building called Fife House, which I have to say, as far as new build flats go in London, is actually pretty nice. If you want to get another look at it, there's a similar building on the left coming up here. I quite like the way that the balconies have been done. You'll notice that there's no traffic here, and the reason for that is that, in common with most new developments, the streets have been laid out to be a natural low traffic neighbourhood. That means it's permeable to the back of the path that we came through, and there are even these bollards up ahead restricting motor vehicle access to one of the streets. but it's still broadly accessible to people who need to drive to their homes. There's nothing unusual or special about this at all. This is simply how new developments have mostly been built for a long time now, and it's really just the existing streets that need retrofitting to remove through traffic. Bear to the right on the cycle path here and use the Toucan crossing to cross Haringey High Street. This will lead you onto the church path, although this is slightly misleading as this is no longer actually a church. On your left there, that's St Mary's Church Tower, and that's actually all that remains of St Mary's Church, other than the grave monuments in this park as well. If you're interested in visiting the church tower, you can actually go on occasional open days. Check out the Friends of Haringey Church Tower website for more information about when those might be. As you exit the ex-churchyard, you'll find yourself on Glebe Road, and this street generally has very little in the way of through traffic. Unfortunately for us, it's a pretty steep hill, as a lot of streets in this part of town are, and we're cycling up it. On the way down, it's very fun though. When you get to the end of Glebe Road, what we're going to do is we're going to trace our way through some back streets to get close to the centre of Crouch End. The first thing we do is turn right down Harold Road, which is a lot less steep. This also has very little traffic on it. Then at the end of Harold Road, we turn left onto Hillfield Avenue. This street is also a bit of a hill, but in this case it actually works in our favour because it's downhill for us, so isn't that fun? At the end of Hillfield Avenue, turn left into Roxley Avenue, and at the end of Roxley Avenue, you'll find yourself on Tottenham Lane, pretty close to the centre of Crouch End. You know you're in Crouch End because there's a kebab shop dead ahead of us that says Crouch End Best Kebab. And there we have it, we've arrived. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed showing off the new low traffic neighbourhoods in Haringey. I think they're going to be a big success. It was also nice to see how they linked up to the main road routes in Enfield and also some of the more historic cycle routes around Crouch End, Haringey. If you really liked that, you can consider supporting us on Patreon, there's a link in the description, or if you only liked it a bit, then just hit subscribe so that you're alerted when new videos are posted. Thanks very much for watching guys, and I'll see you again next time.